Hi guys, Catherine Newton coming to you from the heart of the Ozarks in Missouri. I'm a mental health therapist that works with traumatized folks who've had long-term childhood trauma, and this is sometimes referred to as complex post-traumatic stress disorder or developmental trauma or childhood trauma. So today we're going to be talking about the hostile takeover. It's what I call the hostile takeover. The hostile takeover in my vernacular is one of the most painful things that can happen to a trauma survivor. But so it's really important to understand it and then eventually be able to work with it and overcome it. I mean, it really is the crux of healing from childhood trauma. So the hostile takeover is when a part of you gets activated by something from the past, and there's an emotional flashback, which is also called spontaneous age regression. What this looks like is that you might be walking through the mall with your husband and he says something that is critical. Criticism is a huge trigger, or something accusatory. Accusation is a huge trigger for most trauma survivors. He says something that makes you feel rejected or potentially makes you feel abandoned. Those things are huge, common triggers for trauma survivors. Not being heard, not feeling heard, witnessing injustice is a huge one. So one of those things happen. You're walking through your day and one of those things happen, and you notice, if you're lucky, you notice that you're feeling kind of weird. But then a part of you comes out, and Richard Schwartz for internal family systems calls this a protector part. But ego state therapy talks about it like a child part. It's a child or an adolescent part. Different languages refer to it differently. Structural dissociation refers to it as a fight part. Okay, so let's say this trigger happens, this activation happens, you're feeling those chemicals course through your system. Everything within you is telling you you need to react. And it's really, really hard because you have a picosecond to stop that. And if you don't stop that, the part takes over, and there is what I call a hostile takeover. And that part takes care of business and makes sure the other parts are protected. But the way that part does it is like a bull in a china shop. And so it doesn't usually end up very well. And usually that overreaction gets the survivor into trouble in some way. And even if it doesn't get the survivor into trouble, the internal shame cycle that happens is enough to make you regret that you ever did what you did or said what you said. Unfortunately, it's usually 2 or 3 days down the road before you realize that you overreacted, and so it's usually too late to stop it. It's never too late to say you're sorry, to ask for forgiveness, to make amends. Always remember that. If a person in your life cannot accept an apology or your effort to make amends, they're probably not going to be in your life very long, because when you're starting to heal from childhood trauma, there's going to be overreactions. There's going to be hostile takeovers, and you have to learn to give yourself grace when that happens and recognize you can be forgiven and do what you need to do to clean up your mess. And really, the hostile takeover is a precursor to learning how to put the brakes on when everything in your system is telling you to react. Everything in your system is telling you that it's dangerous, that what that person just said to you is dangerous, and you need to fight back or do something. Okay? These parts that come out and take over, they all have a positive intention, and they're just trying to keep you safe. They just don't realize you live in 2022 now. So you have to have compassion and empathy, but that is basically the hostile takeover. Everyone who's been traumatized experiences this in one way or the other. The hostile takeover might not always be $100 reaction in terms of anger or the fight part. It could be an underreaction. Okay, that's just as common. You get activated and triggered, and all of a sudden you disappear. You go into hypoarousal. You go into flight, freeze, or total submission. Obviously, going into total submission in the face of something that makes you feel threatened is not a good idea. Obviously, especially if it's in a sexual situation where you just go into total submission when someone is making you feel threatened. You could end up being date raped. You could end up being raped. You could end up having sex with someone that you don't really want to have sex with. So in total submission, it carries with it its own issues, because you sort of become a cardboard cutout in other people's minds, because they see you as somebody who is just very submissive. So all of these action systems, have their own hostile takeover and what it looks like. But the bottom line is, until you can get a grip on when this is happening, why this is happening, how to keep one foot in the present while it's happening, that dual awareness piece, you are not going to be able to heal. And you're going to feel more and more discouraged. And most of the time people get to the point where if they don't get into treatment and really work on this, they get to the point where they just give up on relationships, which is really what we need to heal. So I hope this helps. Okay. I will talk to you soon. And keep in mind, everyone has these who's been traumatized. It's not our fault, but it is our responsibility to figure out how to do it different and reset our nervous systems. Have a great day, and I will talk to you again soon. God bless.